Witches and wizards of the world! This is the Hogwarts Chaplain coming to you from the Great Hall on Easter Sunday. Hallelujah! Christ is risen! The Lord is risen indeed. And it is a tradition in the Christian church, my friends, that when we declare that Christ is risen, we ring our bells in joy for the light that bursts forth from an empty tomb. My friends, the reading this morning tells the story that Jesus, who was crucified on Friday, who was the victim of so much violence and betrayal and corruption and torture and death penalty, he is laid in a tomb. And over the time of the Sabbath, all we know is that the disciples were terrified. They were scattered. They didn't know what to do next. Their leader, their Lord, had been slaughtered like a lamb led to the slaughter, not fighting back, not exacting revenge, but accepting the torture and the death. But that sunrise on Sunday morning, it was women who left the group, who went forth to find the grave. They had their oils. They were ready with their prayers. They were going to anoint a dead body, a man whom they loved, but who they believe now to be dead, his life over. But they went for a kind of funeral, and they found something so different, a plot twist. When they arrived, the tomb that they had come to open only to hold the dead. And instead they see the tomb has been burst open. The tomb could not hold the life that burst out of it. And someone who they thought was a gardener asked them who they're looking for. But they're looking for Jesus of Nazareth. But they are told, why are you looking for the living among the dead? He is not here. He is risen. And the women receive the gift of the presence of the sight of Christ resurrected right in front of them, my friends. The resurrection had happened, and they happened upon it, and they become the first witnesses to the promise that Jesus would rise from the dead. Ha! My friends, this reading is full of so many promises delivered. It is not unlike the last book in our 7-book series that we've been looking at each week, one Sermuncle at a time, 1 week at a time, where we look at the readings and we pick another book. And of course, we've come on Easter Sunday to the 7th, the last book. And so much like the reading today, this last book is full of prophecies and promises, opened up, shared, delivered. There's so much Christian symbolism, my friends, in this last book. There are hours and hours we could spend talking about it. So we will focus on just the most important points. My friends, what you learn at the end of the 7th book is that this has been a kind of Christian story all along. Or you might say, the kind of story a Christian would tell. That's how J.K. Rowling explains it. That she did not discuss her faith until she'd finished writing the last book. And after the last book was finished, she told interviewer after interviewer that of course she is a follower of Jesus. Of course she is a Christian. Of course she goes to church. And she said the reason she kept all that from her readers and from the world is that she thought if people knew that she was a Christian, and if they knew the Christian story, she said she was worried that they would know how these books would end. She thought it would be a spoiler to tell people what her imagination had been formed to believe about the world. And it is this, that love defeats death, that when we sacrifice our life for others, that there is an efficacy. Things change when we do that. We change. The world changes. Love is powerful, more powerful than anything. Love wins. And resurrection defeats death. She said that was her message from the beginning. My friends, we know in the 7th book when Harry and Hermione find those 2 Bible verses on 2 different graves in Godric's Hollow. We talked about this in our first Sermuncle on Ash Wednesday. That according to J.K. Rowling, those 2 verses explained not only her 7-book series from beginning to end, but also her own faith. Remember the 2 verses. The first was found in the grave of Albus Dumbledore, and it was for his family. And the verse was this, from Jesus: "Where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. What a perfect verse for Dumbledore. And in a sense, what a perfect verse for Lent, or for getting through life. It is the call to all of us, that of all the positions on the Quidditch team, that we are all called to be seekers, to test and to try things and situations and people and challenges and promises. And in all things be a seeker. Find out what our treasure is and then be willing to die for it. Treasure it. That was Dumbledore's great challenge in life, to find out what is true. And we know all too well that at different times in his life, he chose the wrong treasure and he was willing to die for it. But unfortunately, in choosing the wrong treasures and being willing to die for it, he was actually willing to have other people die in pursuit of his own ambition. And people did, including his sister, a burden he carried till the end of his life. So be a seeker. That is the verse on his grave. And half of what J.K. Rowling believed was the truth of her books and of her faith. But there's that second verse on the grave of Lily and James Potter. And Harry cries when he reads it because he does not understand it. In the darkness of Christmas Eve, he and Hermione see that verse on the stone. And it says this: "The last enemy to be defeated is death." Harry at first doesn't understand. He thinks that's what Death Eaters are trying to do, to defeat death, to escape death. But Hermione tries to explain to Harry, no, Harry, I don't think that's what it means. It means life after death. It's not a Death Eater creed. It's a different kind of creed. It is the belief in life after death. But that scene says that Harry left crying. He doesn't understand it. But the truth is, my friends, he just doesn't understand it yet. My friends, we have to ask ourselves, why are these stories so popular across the world? Somewhere between 700 million and 1 billion people have read this story in 67 languages and growing. My friends, if you've ever asked yourself, why are these stories so popular? Consider perhaps this answer. They are so popular because they are satisfying. That is the word, my friends, I have heard people use to describe these books, that they are just so satisfying. Of course, they're inspiring and they're also enraging and they're creative and they're just fun. But there's something about them that is also satisfying. My friends, what does that tell us? It tells us that these stories offer up something, not just that entertains, but something that feeds a longing that we have. That's what J.K. Rowling said she thought she was doing. Not offering a new story or a new message, but casting a true message in her own story of the boy who lived. Not something new, but a new way to present what is true. And the reason these stories satisfy us is because they speak to deep, universal longings. The kinds of different longings that you find in 67 different languages and cultures. All the continents full of people who've read these stories again and again and again. There must be something in them, my friends, more than a good story. There must be something in them that is true. And when that truth is encountered by anyone who speaks any language, something in them doesn't say, wow. Something in them says, where have you been for so long? I recognize these stories. I don't just love them. I recognize them. Something in this last book especially reaches into our hearts and says, yes, the things for which you long, the things that you are afraid of, the things that you would love to see, the things that you need to experience, something in this story begins to feed those universal longings. And you begin to realize that from beginning to end, these stories present two views. There is the Voldemort view of death, which is to escape it, to try to defeat it by avoiding it. And then there's the Harry model, which is that over time you learn that death is not something to be escaped from. That death is something that awaits all of us, but that we have to learn to walk toward it, as the books say, and greet it as an old friend. To walk toward death. How can you do that? Something so terrifying that it terrified Voldemort. How can you do it? Look at this last book. It absolutely shows you how. Harry, by the 7th book, is ready. And what is he ready to do? He's ready to do what he saw Dumbledore do in The Half-Blood Prince. that Dumbledore was able to sacrifice himself in that cave. But then somehow after he sacrifices himself to live through the experience and go with Harry and come out of the cave with fire and light behind them, almost bursting them out, there was a kind of tomb there, and they both came out of it. They went into death and they came out with life. And then Harry watched Dumbledore fall off the tower, having given his life first to try to save Draco and then to save Snape from the punishment of making the unbreakable vow and not living into it and living up to it, and giving his life for a greater plan. But then we have someone else that shows Harry. Dobby. Dobby, who comes to them when they're in the dungeon. He goes back to the Malfoy's house, the place that had been his place of slavery. What an awful place, but he returns to it. He returns to it because he wants to save his friends. And he gathers them up and he takes them out. And Harry watches another person lead him out of a dungeon, out of darkness, just like coming out of the Chamber of Secrets or coming out of the Shrieking Shack. So many times in these stories, J.K. Rowling gives us the same image. People have gone down into something dark. And then some figure, some Christ-like figure, whether it's a phoenix, or whether it's Dumbledore, or whether it's Dobby, or whether it's his godfather, whether it's a hippogriff, something that flies, something that sings, someone who loves sacrificially. In almost every book, someone goes down to save Harry from somewhere dark and carries him out. But in this last story, my friends, we have Dobby, the last person he sees, to do something for him yet again, to pull him out of a grave, back up into life, and then Dobby dies. And it is when Harry is burying Dobby, when he is digging that grave, he realizes at the bottom of the grave that he is going to make a decision himself, that he is going to look at all the doubts he has and walk away from them and decide that there are things about Dumbledore he will never understand. There are things about Voldemort or even evil he will never understand. But enough has happened to him already. He's learned enough about love to know it is worth living for and dying for. And he makes his resolution as he buries Dobby that he will go forth to the end, not seeking Hallows, but seeking Horcruxes. Yes, the world would say, seek the Hallows, be the most powerful wizard, and you will defeat everyone else. But he decides while he's burying Dobby, no, I will believe Dumbledore. That is the man I knew, and he loved. He believed in love, and so do I. So instead, I will seek Horcruxes. I will seek to weaken the one who wants to hurt others. And then I will believe that there is a way. He seeks Horcruxes, not Hallows. He seeks love, not instruments of death. That is a choice for every one of us. To embrace love, believing that love wins. My friends, it all goes down in the chapter called The Forest Again. It is toward the end of the last book, and it is when Harry does the most Christ-like thing he's done in the stories so far. He is going to go into the forest again, a place where he went in the first book, and he was brought out by Firenze. When he went in the second book and he was brought out by the Ford Anglia. But this time, yes, he goes in again, but this time he knows that he goes in to sacrifice himself with no hope of being dragged out and saved in the last moment by someone else. So in some ways it's the forest again, but in other ways it's his first time going in alone to do what he believes will help others. So my friends, he takes that walk. He is terrified. The books are very good at describing this step by step, that it is not easy to die. But he has seen in the Pensieve what Snape did, and it becomes clear to him, because he's heard it now. He's heard it, that his fate is to go and die for others, to stop trying to kill Voldemort, and to simply offer his life, that Voldemort's life would end. So he makes his way. He's got the image of what Dumbledore has done for him. He's got the image of what Dobby has done for him, and he takes his turn. And then he pulls out, my friends, the golden snitch. And he sees written on it those words, I open at the close. And then he speaks the words that he is about to die. And when he says that, saying that he has done all the learning of his life from Dumbledore of what love is, he's reached that point where he makes the statement, I am about to die. It is about to be over. And yet, it isn't over. The snitch opens. And what comes out is the resurrection stone. He is met by resurrection. Once he decides he is done trying to kill death, kill Voldemort, whose name even means to wish death, Voldemort. Once he stops wishing to kill him, the stone comes up, and then he sees all around him those who have loved him. My friends, this is a beautiful scene from the verse of Hebrews 12:1, where it says, "Now surrounded by this great cloud of witnesses, let us cast off every sin or the things that hold us back." We have to fix our eyes on Christ and run the race. And in that same verse, you hear the words, Christ, who goes through the crucifixion for the joy set before him. You begin to realize that Harry now is surrounded by the cloud of witnesses of people who love him, who say, "We will be with you." And Harry wonders where they've been until now. And of course, he's reminded by his mother, "We never left you." The great cloud of witnesses, my friends, surround you, and they surround me. Love wins, and death cannot destroy it. And the love you have received from others and that you receive from God is around you now. And when he sees that power, that fellowship, that when you go to sacrifice yourself for others, you do not go alone. The forest is a crowded place, my friends. The world is a crowded place full of love for you, for all of us. That is the way God made it. So then he moves forward to make his sacrifice, surrounded by love. My friends, you begin to realize at this point in the story that Harry is doing not something that God did, that we can't do ourselves. That's what's dangerous when we call Harry a Christ figure, but because then he becomes something perfect. Maybe you're intimidated and say, well, I can't be a Christ figure. But instead, I think what J.K. Rowling wants you to think instead is Harry's a flawed person just like us, and yet he's able to do it. All he had to say was, I am ready to die. So my friends, here is the message, both of the readings today and of the last book and of Sunday, Easter morning. Resurrection, my friends, is present now. It was always in the snitch. The only thing that changed on that day is Harry opened himself up to it. He put down the weapons of a wand or the weapons of war or whatever we use to fight death. Our doubts, our skepticism, our sarcasm, our apathy, our fear. Lay them down in the forest and walk toward death knowing that death has lost its sting. That what was written on that tombstone is true. That death has been defeated. My friends, please do not think that the resurrection means you're going to go to heaven and not hell. That the resurrection is some kind of get out of jail free card. It's something that happens to you when you die. My friends, if that's what you think, you haven't read the last book, where Harry offers himself, and then he winds up in what J.K. Rowling calls this limbo of King's Cross Station, where he walks and talks with Dumbledore. He is literally in King's Cross. He has gone through the cross. He has offered his life. Voldemort tried to take it. But what happens when he gets the invitation to go back to life? He goes. He comes off King's Cross. He comes off the cross and goes back into life. And my friends, he reunites with his friends and he fights with Voldemort for others. And the death curse that Voldemort hails at Harry, just before Harry has said to him, try some remorse. Harry does not give up on him, even in the last minute. Harry's experience of love has so filled him that there is room in him to even forgive Voldemort. But Voldemort does not take this offer. He hurls a death curse at Harry, but that wand will not kill its owner, and the curse rebounds and takes Voldemort's own life. Harry does not kill Voldemort, my friends. Voldemort kills himself. The death that he hurls at Harry cannot touch him. And why is that? Because Harry has already chosen the belief that there is life after death, and that there is nothing that Voldemort can take from him. There is nothing that death can do to the love that is in Harry forever. My friends, in Christianity, resurrection is not some reward at the end of life. We are not mercenaries fighting, waiting to be paid at the end of the battle. Resurrection is now. It is the women who came to the tomb. They saw the resurrection then, not at their death. My friends, the resurrection is not some promise that you'll die differently. It's not just that. The resurrection is a promise that you will live differently. It doesn't just change the way we die. It changes the way we live. My friends, when you can take all of death that's in you and take it and have it die believe in the resurrection. So when Harry leaves King's Cross Station, the death that was in him is left there. That bleeding, bloody, fetal Voldemort that was haunting him his whole life is ripped out. My friends, that is what resurrection is. We are freed from death, from its fear, from believing that it will take our lives from us, that it will take our loves from us. No, my friends, death dies and Harry comes back and is able to live with the resurrection. The resurrection means the love that fills you now. The life that fills you now is death moves away. It's no longer a fear. It's no longer a threat. It's no longer a wall. My friends, then you can live differently now. This is the message of Easter morning while we ring the bells. To let people know you can choose this now. My friends, death cannot stop the resurrection that begins, not when you die, but when you decide, I am ready to die, and I believe that love will win. If you are a Harry Potter fan and you're trying to understand all of this, or even just the reading for today, what is this thing that happens at the tomb? Well, my Harry Potter friends, in one sentence, in Harry Potter language, is summed up all of the Christian creeds, all of the Christian understanding of the resurrection, and especially the story of today. And here it is, one sentence. The women go to the tomb, my friends. They go for a funeral, and instead they find a feast. And they look up and see the tomb empty, the stone rolled away. But what is written across the top into that stone, above the open door of the empty tomb? These words, I open at the close.